Okay, so we are going to talk about how to properly shallow the shaft. Now, this video, this is going to rock your world. Because listen, if you can learn how to do what I'm about to show you, your game and your life, I don't want to say your life, but if you're really passionate about golf, maybe your life is going to change forever. It did for mine, because this is when I started to learn how to hit stock shots, how to shallow it, and you're going to have, this is going to blow up some myths for some of you, some aha moments. Some of you are going to go, oh my gosh, I've been wasting 20 minutes or 20 years of my life trying to hit a golf ball from the inside or on plane, and I've been doing it completely wrong. Now, when you've seen a video of me doing something like, I go, hey, if you can shallow the shaft, just go like this. That's what we're going to talk about, because any person under the sun, I think, for the most part, can shallow the shaft. It does not take special talent. If you can hammer a nail, you can shallow the shaft. Now, what does that mean? So, first and foremost, let's talk about the role of like your trail arm, right? Because your trail arm has a lot of influence on the golf swing. You got guys like Ben Hogan said, I wish I had 3 right arms. The greatest ball striker of all time says, I want 3 trail arms. Why? Because that puppy is building speed and control into his golf swing. And your hands and your arms are really important. It's why tour players talk about their hands and arms all the time. They're never talking about, let me rotate harder, right? They never say that. What they talk, Tiger Woods talks, I feel the ball through my hands, right? Like all these things, like Ben Hogan talking about all these different feelings of taking arrows out of his quiver, and like Davis Love and Zach Johnson, all these players, they're all talking about these things. So we're going to correlate. I'm going to connect so many dots for you in the next couple minutes. It's going to be insane. Now, what I need you to do is I need you to stand up out of your chair, and I want you to look at this. Now, some of the information that I got from this, right, this has been a lifetime of learning, right? As you may know or may not know, like my coach was Mike Bender, and he taught me so much stuff. And the science that's coming out basically depicts, like, Mike, you're a genius, right? Like way ahead of his time, right? Like it's like the Albert Einstein. So, you know, this is kind of the validating, and the validation came from our friends at Athletic Motion Golf, who are also amazing, super smart guys, right? But here's the deal. To shallow the shaft, what I want you to do is I want to stand up out of your chair if you can, or do this later, but I'd like you to stand up so you can do this with me. And all I want you to do is I want you to make basically a right arm with your arm, right? So anybody can kind of do a right arm, right? So this is kind of, this is called adduction. This is called abduction. So we want to have this trail arm, if this is 0 degrees, we want to have it about 20 degrees out, okay? Now, if I take my right hand and I'm kind of holding it, kind of like I would be holding a tray, or like, let's say, pointing my thumb out here beside me. So I'm not holding it and pointing my thumb at my face. I'm not pointing it at the camera. It's just kind of pointing out here. Now, this is the way your trail arm is in your backswing. So you can see that if I did this and I held my club, right, and then I turned and grabbed a club, that's my backswing. So you can see how that is perfectly on plane, right? So that's where we're setting up at the top. Now, to shallow a club, super simple. If I'm like this, and I've got my tricep parallel to the ground, my right arm and my thumb, all I have to do is lower my arm, right? I have to lower my arm, unfold my elbow, and maybe turn my wrist out a hair. So I'm lowering my arm, unfolding my elbow, and turning my wrist. Now, if I did that, right, lower my arm, unfold my elbow, and turn my hand, and then I put my hand on it, right? And you see that now if I got in my posture, which is in my downswing, you can see the club would be perfectly on plane, right? Now, that's so if you can do this, it's almost like if I was going to say, like, if I was like, hey, give me some money, right? Like, hey, this is shallowing for the most part. A little different, but kind of similar move. Now, the way that you're practicing that is that's where the cone comes in. So the cone is amazing because it basically does this. Now, in the following clip, I'm gonna cut over to this video of Justin Rose, and he's going to talk about the same thing. It's a minute video, so you can hear it coming from a tour player. It's not going to be coming from me, but coming from Justin. So check this out.
I like to feel that I stay closed halfway down. So basically, I'm feeling like my left arm is dropping down my chest as I stay closed to the target. That does a couple of things for me. It helps my rhythm. It keeps me very patient off the top of the backswing, and also it helps me keep a little bit of lag and a little bit of angle as I come down into the ball. One of my faults is when I get a little bit quick and I unwind too early. And when that happens, I have to hit the brakes essentially and wait for the club to fall into the hitting zone, and hence I have to time impact so much more, and I end up actually losing the face through impact. But when I make this move, and I really wait for it, now I put myself in a position where I have to turn very aggressively through impact. So I can pivot much faster, much harder, much more powerfully, and that actually stabilizes the face through the hitting area. Should look something like this.
So Justin Rose talks about him lowering his arm, and then it gives him the ability to pivot really hard to stabilize the face, right? So he kind of runs his arm down, which is the feeling of the right arm, and then he pivots. We can do that with the cone, right? So if I set up and I do this, let me show you this really quick so I can take this screen off so it's not distracting. But if I set up and you check out this screen behind me, right to the left, and I just want you to watch the screen, don't watch me. Right? So if I set up and I take it up to the top and I'm on my backswing and then I lower my arm, look at how the shaft perfectly shallows onto the plane. And all I'm doing is this. So if you can do this, you can shallow. Hey, Merry Christmas. It's not that hard. You do not need to go up here and like pull your elbow in, because if I do that, that's my elbow going like this. I'm getting a bunch of like adduction to it, which is no good. That's not what pros do. They don't do that. So stop trying. You know, it's not going like this and like, you know, tilting back and all that stuff. If it hurts your body, it's probably not right, right? Let's just be honest. Like God created the swing, is my opinion, and he's smart enough to say if I do it right, it shouldn't hurt. So if it hurts, you're probably not doing it right. So if I set up like this and I go back and I lower my arm, the club is on plane. Now to Justin Rose's point, all I have to do is pivot, and then I can go right around the arc, and you can pivot as hard as you want, which is amazing. Now, to practice that, now I'm going to kind of turn this thing off so you can look at this. I'm going to kind of connect a few dots. And especially, I'm going to show you kind of this path stuff. So if I set up, and I get this here, I'm going to get in my posture, right, and I'm setting up the cone, right, in its spot. What you're going to see is that as I go back, I'm lowering my arm, and as I'm lowering my arm, I'm then shifting pressure into my lead foot. So it's like if this was a wall, I'm going back, I'm lowering and pushing my weight into my pressure in my lead foot. Now, what is the value of that, you say? Well, the value of that is that there is I think it's 74 or 76% correlation between how much pressure you put into the ground at lead arm, at the like shaft vertical, and how much force you can have. Because that, when I put pressure down here, at that moment I'm then starting to push up out of the ground, and that's like me throwing this handle like this, and you can see this club has a certain amount of force, right? And now when I pull up on the handle, the club goes faster. If I pull up too early, the club actually slowed down. If I pull up too late, it doesn't do anything. But at the right time, it goes faster. So now I've gotten my setup, I've gone back, and then I've pushed into the ground, right? And now I'm going to be pulling up on the club, which is going to put all the centrifugal force at the bottom, which is going to give me speed, right? And I'm rotating, which then stabilizes the face. The rotation is the stabilizer. It is not necessarily the accelerator, if you will, right? It does accelerate and create some speed, but it also helps stabilize the face. So now, if I'm setting up with my cone and I go back and I kind of go one pump, and you can see how shallow that is, two pump, and then I hit, you can see that this attack, this swing direction is going to be way out here to the right, right? Still a good shot, but it's out to the right. And you go, man, that's kind of like it's kind of a bigger draw, club path of 12. Like, that's a lot, right? But if you look at this and we bring up the video, I'm going to show you why it's a 12. So as I come back and I erase, let me pull these videos off. One sec, sorry about that. And I pull this back, so there's your kind of your plane, and I come down, you're going to see that the shaft is going to be on the plane right here, which is going to be eerily similar to, like, if you were to say, I mean, if we were probably, everybody on here would probably say, well, Rory swings it pretty good. So if I bring Rory in, let's pull this plane in. Right, so here's his here's his swing plane. And then as he goes up to the top, his arm's lower. You can really see how his arm's lower, right? And then that club, when he comes down, like that club, right where mine's at here, I'm not sure if you can see in the video, looks very, very similar to Rory's, right? But you can see now his swing direction, which is essentially what the club is doing hip to hip, or his club path, if you will. His club path is only 1. Well, my club path's 11. So you go, that's weird, right? So what happens is with the drill, I'm sitting here and I'm doing this and I'm lowering my arm going into my lead side, but I haven't added rotation into my hips or my chest. I've just lowered. When I rotate my body, you can see how that pitches the club out. Well, if I have my cone here, if I'm trying to get shallow and I rotate, I'm going to hit the cone. And I'm trying to get shallow because if it's like, if you're doing this, you're trying to hit draws, right? You want to hit that shot I just hit because you don't. You come over the top. So now what ends up happening is I've never seen a player on a tee go like this. Ever. Never seen it. I've seen players go like this, right? And like big like shoulder turns, hip turns, like real over the top, right? So now what ends up happening is you're practicing here and you're getting left and you're lowering your arm and you're not really rotating. Well, then once you get the feeling for that, now you add the same thing. So let me show you this. So now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to feel I'm getting left and lowering my arm, but now I'm going to pour on the rotation like that Justin Rose video. Okay, so now if I pour on the rotation, you're going to see that the club, you're going to see that if I look at this really quick, so now the swing direction is over here, and you can see that the swing direction is now 2, right? It's gone from 8 to 2, so now I'm coming down, but you can see the shaft is in the same spot as it was before, but now my kneecaps are square, and now I can rotate around the arc and control the face, right? So the truth of the matter is that for rotating, or shallowing, if you will, it's not overly difficult. If you can do this, you can shallow a club. You don't need to do like all this hunky-dory craziness. It's not hard. If you can go here and lower your arm and move pressure into your lead side, that's shallowing. So then if you correlate that back to tour players, so you go Jack Nicklaus, right? Jack Nicklaus said he felt like his back was to the target, and as long as he was putting pressure into his lead leg, he couldn't release the club fast enough. This is him releasing. Ben Hogan said he was taking an arrow out of his quiver. Well, that looks a lot like this. So if I'm taking an arrow out of his quiver. Ryder Cup captain Davis Love said he felt like it was like a paintbrush, and he was throwing paint on this back wall, right? Sergio Garcia said he felt like he was ringing a bell. Like all of the feelings are validating this science that has been that's been proven, and that's the beauty of like nowadays is like, you know, all the things that we're teaching inside the golf room, in the golf room, everywhere, they're all being validated by science, which makes me super, super convicted that I'm like, oh my gosh, we have the Coca-Cola formula to hit stock shots, right? Like we've got it. And the science is validating it because it's not an opinion. It's just, this is the facts of like what tour players do. Like the world is round, it's not flat. So like we know it's round because the science says it. And that's what we're saying, is that the science is saying to shallow the shaft, it's not that difficult and anybody can do it. If you can do this, you can do it, you can shallow a shaft. If you need help on how to shallow the shaft, that's where you got a team of coaches at the golf room everywhere that go, hey, how do you walk through this with me? And now you can have the opportunity to learn this because anyone can do it inside the golf room everywhere. So thank you so much. Best of luck hitting stock shots, and thanks for tuning in. If you like this, be sure to say like, subscribe, because we're going to be putting a bunch of content on here so that you can hit stock shots. And thanks so much for tagging along with me for a few minutes.